Dobry wieczór, witam serdecznie po raz kolejny już dzisiaj. Widzę, że jest z nami kilka osób, które już były wcześniej, tym bardziej jest mi jeszcze bardziej przyjemnie. W dzisiejszym materiale, kolejnym materiale dzisiejszym, postanowiłam jeszcze raz przedstawić sylwetkę pana Johna Paula Isaaca. Jest to pan, który w swoim punkcie naprawczym przyjął kilka lat temu, oczywiście jeszcze to było przed wyborami w 2020 roku, przyjął do siebie, do zakładu kilka laptopów. Jak się później okazało, te laptopy należały do Huntera Bidena. I postanowiłam jeszcze raz te materiały przedstawić, chociaż są one oczywiście dostępne na moim kanale, ale ponieważ wiem, że cały czas przybywa tutaj ludzi, którzy subskrybują kanał, postanowiłam właśnie w związku z tym ten cały materiał zmontować w jeden. Jest tam 5 części, a ja postanowiłam te 5 części skleić w jedną część i tutaj zaprezentować. Tak więc zapraszam serdecznie. To jest materiał, który trwa 23 minuty i niestety trzeba czytać, bo to było wtedy jeszcze jak nie podkładałam głosu, tylko robiłam napisy pod filmikami. Tak więc serdecznie zapraszam do obejrzenia materiału.
It's John Paul Isaac. I'd like to take this opportunity to explain my story and to disprove many of the rumors and speculations regarding my actions and my character. Where to begin? This is me when I was little, and this is my father. Wait, let me go back further. This is my grandfather, John Alexander Isaac, a Scottish-Canadian who, after World War II, flew and fought for the United States Air Force against the Soviets in the early parts of the Cold War. In time, my father, Steve Isaac, would follow in my grandfather's footsteps, graduate from the Air Force Academy, and become a military pilot. He deployed to Vietnam to fly AC-119 gunships and continue my family's fight in the Cold War. That fight would consume over half of his decorated 30-year career defending freedom for America and its allies. For 2 generations, the Isaac family has fought during the entirety of the Cold War against communism and the Soviets. That's why it's completely absurd that anyone would ever consider me to be a Russian agent or influenced by Russia. I'm proud of my family, I'm proud of my country, and I'm proud to be an American. If I could see well, I would have followed in my family's profession and joined the Air Force. But instead, I spend my free time going to veterans reunions and archiving and preserving true American heroes and their stories. Men who fought in the warmer parts of the Cold War against the very people I am accused of actually being. Another term that I have been labeled, which unfortunately is a death sentence in my industry, is hacker. And for the record, I am not, nor have I ever been a hacker. Those guys make so much more money than I do. I was hired, but never paid, to perform a data transfer from a MacBook Pro to an external hard drive. The signed paperwork clearly states the process and sets the expectations. There's no magic or Hollywood. The process is no different than dragging and dropping from a USB drive. The only difference is I had to perform some surgery on the Mac to get it to boot to the point where I could recover the data. To imply that I'm a hacker or that information is hacked has had an irreversible impact on my business and my character. My name is John Paul Mac Isaac, and I am legally blind. I'm an ocular catenic albino. My vision is a direct relationship to my albinism. I have an operational vision of about 6 to 8 inches. I can see good enough to move around in a couple feet, but after that it's mostly blurry shapes. Through the use of visual aids and larger screens, I've been professionally repairing Macintosh computers for over a quarter of a century.
I think the issue for us is that the longer we don't understand these few points, we're just going to keep showing up here and this is going to continue. And all we want to know is just the order of things, how they happened, so that we can get it right. And until then, you're going to continue to face these questions.
Aren't going to portray what your true motivation was. And I'm just warning, like I understand that's what your stance is now. You don't want to give us that information. I will try to write this as straight as possible. This happened, this happened, this happened.
All of us, yeah.
All of us, yeah. I appreciate it.
On October 14th, 2020, reporters ambushed me in my Wilmington repair shop, demanding that I confirm that it was really the client that had dropped off the laptop for service. I was concerned that if I had told them I was 100% sure that the client was who he said he was, that they would ultimately see my cane or use my visual impairment to discredit me. As it would stand, and ultimately these same reporters, without citing my visual impairment, would go on to actually question my ability to identify the client.
Thank you for sharing about your medical condition, you not being able to see potentially whoever walked in here.
The client came into my shop April 12, 2019. I'd never seen the client before, nor have I paid enough attention to the client to recognize him. But when checking him in, he provided a first name, a last name, an email address, and a phone number. The client did seem surprised that I didn't recognize him during the check-in process, but I made a further connection when I noticed that one of the 3 MacBook Pros had a sticker that represented the client's deceased brother's foundation. But after checking in the machine and performing a data recovery, I am 100% sure that the person in those videos, photos, and other data that I was hired to recover is the same person that came into my shop and dropped off that machine. The copy of the driver's license signature, the other documents and bank statement signatures all match the signature on the check-in document. With the realization of who he was and what I had seen on that laptop, concern for my safety grew. I can't imagine a family that would be comfortable with that kind of information being in the hands of someone they didn't know, especially if that family is running for President of the United States. My name is John Paul Mac Isaac. Initially, I was reluctant to tell the media about my family's involvement with reaching out to the FBI. My efforts to protect my family from the press ultimately were used by the press to discredit me and discredit my account of my interactions with the FBI. This is my opportunity to clear things up.
See, that's what we were talking about earlier. You did something. You made some action that tipped the FBI off. And I don't think we've gotten clarity on that. Or maybe you didn't. Maybe Hunter Biden told the FBI, which I doubt.
I'm also confused because you told me that you did reach out to the FBI and that they didn't really do much with it. So was it that they came to you or that you went to them?
By the end of the summer, and feeling pressured by the events in the news, I turned to one of the smartest and most trusted people I know, my father. During a return trip from a gunship reunion in Salt Lake City, I had ample time to explain to my father what I had seen and voice my concerns. We decided that the best course of action was to contact the FBI and persuade them to collect the abandoned equipment and provide some level of security should someone come looking for it. We decided, out of an abundance of caution, that my father would reach out to the FBI through their Albuquerque, New Mexico field office, and hopefully get a feeling of how receptive they would be to helping us. So on October 9th, 2019, my father walked into the FBI office in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and spoke to an agent. This is when my father, a retired colonel of 30 years in the United States Air Force, described to me the most humiliating experience of his entire life. My father spoke to an agent that refused to give his name. Then that agent, after hearing my father's concerns, promptly made a copy of the paperwork, told my father to lawyer up and get out of his office. Defeated, my father and I spent the next 3 weeks wondering what we were going to do. And then on November 1st, my father received a phone call. On November 1st, 2019, Agent Joshua from the FBI reached out to my father, requesting to contact me. My father collected his contact information and passed it on to me. A quick Google search revealed that Agent Joshua had been making a name for himself, busting child predators. I instantly trusted and respected Agent Joshua and instructed my father to pass along my contact information. Soon, Agent Joshua called and requested a time to meet and talk about my concerns. I agreed, and on November 21st, 2019, Agent Joshua arrived at my home with an additional agent, Agent Mike. When seated in my living room, Agent Joshua asked if I had seen any child pornography on the client's laptop. I responded that I had seen a lot of questionable material, but I wasn't paying that close of attention to see if there were children involved. But it was a concern based on the personal and private nature of the material. When asked what I was concerned about, I told them it was the personal material as well as financial and political information that could be criminal or illegal and should be in the hands of the authorities. I was also concerned about individuals, both foreign and domestic, that might seek to do me harm based on what I knew and what I was in possession of. And I just wanted it out of my shop. They told me that they'd have to contact their legal team to see if this was something that they could take possession of, but they could not make any promises. Agent Mike texted me and requested a timeline of the events leading up to me reaching out to the FBI. I responded and awaited further instructions. About a week later, agents advised me that they wanted to come into the shop to make a forensic copy of the laptop, but unfortunately they would be unable to take possession or custody of the laptop at that time. A little disappointed and a little reluctant, I agreed to meet them at the shop December 9th, 2019. I first received a phone call in the morning at around 9:50 from Agent Mike, requesting that I text him the serial number of the hard drive that the client had abandoned. Both agents arrived at the shop at around 11 a.m. Agent Joshua immediately handed me a subpoena commanding me to appear before a grand jury. A note in the middle of the first page stated, "In lieu of personal appearance, please see Attachment A." Attachment A included 2 items: the MacBook Pro with serial number and the external hard drive with the serial number that was requested an hour earlier. I was ecstatic. I was getting everything that I wanted. I was getting protection from the FBI. I felt safe. I finally was getting this abandoned laptop and its questionable data out of my shop, and if there was evidence there, then it was finally in the hands of proper authorities. For the first time in months, I was at ease, and I thought that this whole ordeal might finally be over. My name is John Paul Mac Isaac, and this is the story of what happened after I gave the laptop to the FBI.
Well, it sounds like you just said you sought out help from several people, and so there was an intermediary.
The stakes are incredibly high, and hedging on this question, it could impact the safety of a lot more people than just the people you care about.
It wasn't long after my December 9th interaction with the FBI that events transpired that would cause my previous concerns for my safety to return. Agent Mike instructed me that moving forward we should only communicate through text message, no email. He also said that if somebody came into the shop looking for the laptop, that I was to contact him immediately and stall them for 24 hours, and agents would return the equipment. When leaving the shop that day, Agent Mike turned to me and said, in our experience, nothing ever happens to those that don't talk about these things. And at that time, I was just so happy that the laptop was leaving my shop, I didn't hardly notice the odd instructions or the thinly veiled threat. Shortly after agents collected the laptop, I received a call from Agent Mike requesting assistance in accessing the drive. I assisted them by providing phone support until they were able to access the drive and its data. I thought that it was odd that they required my help, and I was starting to get uncomfortable, but I figured I had no choice but to cooperate with the FBI. About 2 weeks later, I got a call at the shop from Agent Mike seeing if anybody had been in about the laptop. I said no, and that was the last I heard from the FBI. By that time, I was started to reflect on my interactions, and I was getting the feeling that the FBI's agenda no longer included my safety. Why was this laptop not in a lab being professionally inspected? Why was it not admitted as evidence during an impeachment? I was getting the feeling that the FBI was holding on to it until the owner returned for it, and that they cared more about protecting it than they were in protecting me. And ultimately, when it came to my safety, I was worse off than I was before. Towards the end of the summer of 2019, before my father reached out to the FBI, I did probably the smartest thing I've ever done in my entire life, and that was make a copy of the drive. I knew I had to get my story told, and I knew I had to find a voice to tell it. At this time, I was trying to have a business, and I was trying to have a life. I knew that I needed to study the material on the drive, and seeing on how there's no expectation of privacy when it comes to things you abandon. I chose a couple emails and files that I thought were topical and that would raise concern. Once again, I enlisted my father and later my uncle and armed them with the tools needed to go out and share my story.
I'm Colonel Steve MacIsaac, United States Air Force retired. I was basically out of the story until a few days after the FBI had taken legal custody of the laptop. He did call me a few days later and said he thought it was strange that the FBI was calling him and asking him for technical support on the Mac laptop. I said, yes, that's very strange because the FBI has one of the best forensic labs in the world, just outside Washington, D.C., and I had assumed wrongly that the day that they took custody of the laptop that it would be on an airplane and down there for proper disposition. So once again, I thought that the FBI had turned their back on us and they were trying to solve it in-house or just find out what was on the computer locally. So then I decided next best thing to do would be to go to Congress. There were two particular people I admired, one in the Senate and a young lad who was over on the Judicial Committee in the House of Representatives. I attempted to get through to both those offices, got the same thing. If you're not willing to talk to me, you can't talk to one of our lawyers. I said, you understand, I'm not supposed to talk to you. I can only talk to a lawyer. Sorry, have a great day. About this time, I upped the ante with my brother-in-law, Colonel Ron Chico Scott, to say, okay, we've got to do something. We're running out of time.
My name is Colonel Ronald J. Scott, Jr., United States Air Force retired after 34 years of service, to include my time at the Air Force Academy. J.P. MacIsaac is my nephew. J.P.'s father, Colonel Steve MacIsaac, reached out to me towards the end of 2019 to fill me in on the laptop and hard drive and their efforts to get the drive in proper hands once they discovered its contents. On May 8, 2020, I posted a message on the White House contact page indicating I had access to potential national security and criminal information and requested a referral to the Justice Department. No response. On May 13, 2020, I reached out to investigative journalist in response to an article he published regarding Blue Star strategies. No response. On May 18, 2020, I sent documentation via email and through the postal system. This consisted of a one-page summary of 3 documents on the hard drive and a copy of the redacted FBI subpoena. No response. On May 29, 2020, I sent a similar one-page summary and redacted subpoena via facsimile to Senator's office. No response.
I think it's a combination of a country that's so paranoid to be fed misinformation combined with other major world issues at the time that caused my cries for help to fall on deaf ears. I was running out of time and I was running out of options, and I had one last hope. I still can't believe everything that has happened. Like, I wouldn't have to be here telling my story if people had done their job and followed the law. I would still have a business. I would still have a place in my community. I'd still have my friends. I'd still be in my home, safe, sleeping in my own bed. But I no longer have any of these things because people refuse to do their job. After the FBI abandoned me, and at great cost, I tried to get the truth to the highest levels of our government. And I would discover that that cost, there's no end. I never wanted to cause any additional pain to the client. From what I had seen, he had been suffering for quite some time, and I wasn't going to add to that. My goal was to get the criminal material to law enforcement and to the Department of Justice, and never to the press or to profit off of selling the story to a tabloid. I felt bad for him because I fully understand what it's like to have a powerful father impose his will upon his son. But my father's will included a sense of honor, respect, dignity, and pride, not only for myself, but for my family and my country. When I was young, I admired my father for his courage and his bravery, and recently his 2 lessons have proved invaluable to getting me through my ordeal, and I wish every son had a father like mine. I was 25 years old on September 11th, 2001, and after the attacks on our nation, I remember reading and hearing, "If you see something, you say something." And I never forgot those words and why they exist. They're a tool for protecting the nation and its citizens, and it's the responsibility of the citizen to sound the alarm when there's danger. And I saw danger. I remember thinking to myself, if I get exposed, there's the potential that I could lose everything. And I thought that I would actually be okay with losing everything as long as the truth got out and I was safe and the people I cared about were safe. So here I am. My business is closed. I'm forced from my home, and I'm waiting for the next chapter of my life to unfold. But I know that if it were to happen again, and I was put in a similar situation, I would sacrifice it all and again sound the alarm.
I to były wszystkie części tego właśnie materiału. Myślę, że w tym czasie, kiedy już znajdujemy się w tym ostatnim etapie czyszczenia bagna, właśnie takie odświeżanie wiadomości i programów dokumentalnych, które już znamy sprzed kilku lat, i spojrzenie na te materiały nowymi oczami, świeżymi oczami będzie teraz bardzo ważne. Tak więc jakiś czas temu, niedawno robiłam oglądaliśmy razem film po raz kolejny Enjoy the Show. Ja teraz jeszcze tłumaczę kolejny materiał, którego jeszcze nie publikowałam. No oczywiście zajmie mi to, przypuszczam, kilka tygodni, bo jest to długi proces, ale mam nadzieję, że uda mi się już wkrótce ten materiał przetłumaczyć i opublikować. A na dzień dzisiejszy, czy też na wieczór dzisiejszy, to już ode mnie wszystko. Jeszcze raz serdecznie wszystkich oglądających pozdrawiam i widzimy się już niedługo.